Welcome back to Exquisitely Aligned. I'm your host, Gina Meyer-Vincent, and your master motivator, here to help you define the life that you desire and deserve. Today, we are talking to Brad Chandler, and Brad has become exactly what is missing in the world today. During Brad's efforts to help his son overcome his extreme anxiety, he found that he had unresolved trauma from his childhood. That unresolved trauma caused his subconscious mind to rule his life by a set of untruths, mainly that he wasn't worthy, causing a lack of self-love and self-compassion. Those untruths dominated his life, costing him 2 marriages, $9 million in business mistakes, use of alcohol and marijuana to escape, amongst many other negative things, kids with anxiety and behavioral challenges. Through a transformative exercise and ongoing meditation and neural reprogramming, he was able to find self-love and self-compassion, and he no longer allows those untruths to affect his life. He was literally and figuratively born again. He found true freedom. He has now created a proven process that will allow others to do the same. If you are ready for a challenge and willing to look at things from a different perspective, please reach out, and all his information is below. And I just want to add to that, he is also a fabulous podcaster, and the name of his show is How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. So welcome. I am so excited to have you with me, Brad, and I know we're going to have fun chatting today.
Thank you so much.
So many of the things that I just read in your bio, I could talk with you. You don't have enough time, but for 3 days, because so many things are jam-packed in there. The feeling of worthiness or unworthiness, I should say, I see as a centuries-old pandemic. And it affects so many of us, men, women, children. I've seen it in my practice. I've seen it within family members, etc. But let's start. Why don't you first, if it's okay, to share a little bit of what you were noticing in your son and then how it brought out what was going on for you? Because I think sometimes our children are picking up our vibes, and they feel the unsettledness of whatever is going on within us, within a marriage or within a home.
Yeah, I would say all the time. If your kids have behavioral problems and you want to know the source, grab your spouse by the hand and go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, because you're probably the source. Notice I didn't say it's your fault. So what was going on with me is I was doing the best I could as a single dad for now 13 years, but he had deep anxiety. And when I got on this call with this performance coach, she was like, "You have a tick." I'm like, "What?" I literally thought maybe I had a tick on me or something. She's like, "No, you blink like crazy when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unprocessed stuff that's actually affecting your son's anxiety." And I'm like, "Me? No chance." I do everything with my son. I get up, I take him to the bus, I cook him dinner. We travel around the world playing in golf tournaments. No chance. She's like, "But if you want to come out and work with my ex-Navy SEAL husband, then you should." And I go, "Okay, I'll do anything," because he did have, I tried everything. I tried the drug route. I tried psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, and nothing worked. And so sure enough, I went out and did that work. And in this 3-hour session, I realized I had this unworthiness that was driving my life, and not even knowing it was putting this pressure on him where he felt he could never be enough, because I thought I was being a great dad. Hey, you did well in this golf tournament. How can we do better next time? Hey, you made a B. How can we make an A? I just thought I was doing the best. But his meaning, what he placed on that is, I'm not worthy either.
Yeah, it's I love everything you said. So approximately how old was your son when you were coming to this realization?
18, 19.
Yeah. And I think so many children, I don't know if the word is suffer, with struggle with these feelings. Forgive me. Sometimes I don't have the right word. I'm looking at my little dots.
Great. I think suffering and struggling are perfect words.
Okay. And I think that I think when we add the layer of social media on top of that, it just amplifies, because I think this has been around for centuries, honestly.
Agreed.
But it was not as maybe apparent or as seen or talked about, or brilliant dads like yourself worthy to, not worthy, but able
Willing.
to say, willing, thank you, able to say, hey, let me look in the mirror, and maybe she's on to something, and maybe I do need to work with him. And so I love all of that. And I love the fact that you tried all the routes, right? You mentioned medicine, which I think we live in a world, I'm guilty of it sometimes too, the quick instant fix of how do I fix this? How do I remedy this? So how old is your son now?
He's 22.
Okay, awesome. And well, I want to hear everything. I want to hear about your journey, what you learned, and I also want to hear about how this affected him. So I'll let you pick which direction do you want to go in first.
Yeah, well, I can just give you an update on my son. I mean, he's been given all the tools, and he's not in that state of anxiety where he's just like in panic mode every day. Mm-hmm. He's in a much better place, and he's at a certain journey in his life, and he's getting poised or ready to make the next step. So he's in a much better position.
That's phenomenal. That's just kudos to both of you and to everyone who assisted, sent love, and all of the wonderful things that make that happen. And then tell us about your journey.
Well, look, I mean, my journey, wow. When I say I was born again, it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with I am a completely different human being than I was, Gina, three and a half years ago, because this I'm not enough controlled every area of my life. Every single area of my life. I was the guy who thought I had self-love. I thought I had high self-esteem. I would tell you I didn't care what other people thought. And it was all just a lie. It was an untruth to get me through, to just keep me pushing. So since everything has changed, I mean, everything has changed. I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm in an amazing relationship. I've got the best relationships I've ever had with my kids. Even the financial part, like I lost $9 million from 2005 to 2017 in various mistakes. Every single one of those mistakes, Gina, can be tied back to my unworthiness. And now I help entrepreneurs and business executives. And I can't tell you, because I know a lot of them, they're going through the same thing. They think that they need another mastermind, or they need a new marketing campaign, or they need a business coach. No, what they need to do is they need to clear out these limiting beliefs that are driving them to take risk and create chaos, and or they make a lot of money and they're just miserable and their relationships suck and they drink too much and smoke too much weed. It can all be fixed in like a matter of hours. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's I was going to say it's fascinating that I've just had a similar conversation with another gentleman, and he found his way, I think 30 years ago, but big executive with the banks, making crazy amounts of money, marriages falling apart, relationships with his kids not good. And he finally heard a voice in his head, and the therapist said, I'm done working with you. Go listen to the voice. And he went ahead and got clean, and no more alcohol, no more drugs. And it just changed his life. And quantum physics was similar. They all work alike, right? Yep. At an energy level. And what I think sometimes people don't understand, and I'd love for you to give a voice to it, is sometimes these traumas or these limiting beliefs have been passed down through generations. Did you find that with yourself or with your clients?
Yes. I want to touch on something before I go there, because this is kind of like the key to success in life and happiness. Success not being money, by the way.
Right.
Is that every negative behavior that we have is our brain's solution to something that it thinks is worse. So it's not your fault. So if you've got anxiety, depression, you drink too much, even though it's negative and we don't like it, and you've had a hard time losing the weight or stopping the drinking every night, it's because your brain is saying, this may be bad, but if you stop, you got to face something even worse.
Yeah.
That thing that you think is worse is nothing more than an untruth that was formed in childhood to get you through a stressful situation. So to answer your question, Gina, I was actually having a conversation with a good friend of mine 2 nights ago whose son is struggling mightily with depression. And he's like, yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that his mom was an alcoholic. Maybe that does, but I think the depression runs in the family. And I said, no. I go, listen to me. Depression doesn't run in families. Alcoholism doesn't run in families. Addiction doesn't run in families. You know what runs in families? Because there's no alcoholism gene. There's no depression gene. What runs in families, Gina, is the trauma that is associated with those things. That's what runs in families. So 100%. Why did I feel not enough? It was because of my 2 parents who didn't feel enough. They were doing the best they could, but neither of them felt good enough. Why? Was it their fault? No, it was because of how they were brought up.
Yeah. And I think it's important. The word fault comes up in conversations with my husband. He's probably going to pinch me for saying, so it's my fault. And I'm like, why does that word pop in here? Like I'm not looking to say we need to point a finger to somebody for fault. It's like, no, let's just have a conversation. Where was the breakdown of communication or misunderstanding? Hey, I'm from New York. I talk fast. Sometimes he's a little slower. You know what I mean? But that word fault, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about that for a little bit, because I find that some people, my husband, and I'm not sure, I think I know where it comes from, but I'm not going to air that on the show until I get to for sure what it was. But, I think oftentimes that comes from childhood of like, whose fault is something. And I think if we can release that word from our vocabulary and not even think in that manner, we're able to resolve things a little faster. I like hearing from other people. How would you express that?
Yeah. Fault is judgment, right? And it's moralistic. It's if you're good and you make A's, then you're good. But if you make C's, you're bad, and that's bad. Whose fault is that? When you have two parents who don't feel enough, it's a defense mechanism. Oh, this is what used to happen in my 2 marriages, Gina. My exes would come to me and they would tell me something they didn't like about something I did. And I would immediately feel, oh, you're attacking me. And my subconscious brain was likely saying, see, I told you you weren't enough. They're proving it. So what did I do? I made it about them. Oh, well, this is your fault. Well, you did this, and this last week. And last year, remember when you did this and this? That was the fight part. And then I got into the flight part. The flight was I would be cold and distant for 3 days. 3 days. I had this like weight on my chest. I didn't like it. That's the negative behavior I was talking about earlier. I didn't like it. I didn't know where it was coming from, but I didn't know how to get rid of it.
Right.
Now, when Yvonne comes to me and says, listen, this bothered me, I'm not fighting for my worthiness, so I can say, okay, I'm sorry that bothered you. Let's talk about it.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I'm going to send you my husband.
Please do.
No, because it's, I'm glad you gave a voice to that. And I'm happy you're a man, because I think sometimes people have to hear it in other, versus a high voice, a low pitch voice. But I think that it's a reality that happens often. And I think that if in a marriage or even in dating, or if a couple's living together, there can be so much more harmony when we're not dealing with that worthiness factor underneath, always kind of bringing it, rearing its head. And I think sometimes people don't understand, why do I feel, like you were saying, you addressed, why didn't I, did you say it was like a heavy weight? I forgot the words you used.
Yeah, a heavy weight on my chest. So think about this. As a 5-year-old, this is actually like an actual client. As a 5-year-old, mommy won't give you a cookie. So you tell her you hate her. Mm-hmm. She cries for 2 hours. And then 4 hours later, dad gets home and spanks you and says, don't you ever make mommy feel like that. What do you do as a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old? You say to yourself, you learn something. You say, if I'm myself, because I was just being myself, telling my mom I hated her, but she couldn't handle it because of her past. If I am my authentic self, love gets taken from me. We've lived, we've been, our brains have been around for 6 million years, and we've lived in tribes for 99% of that time, right? What would happen in a tribe when you upset the tribe leaders? You would get kicked out. So as a 5-year-old, when mom screams at you and says you're no good and dad hits you, your primitive brain is thinking, I better change the way I am or I'm going to get kicked out of the tribe and die. Right. So when my ex-wife would come to me and say something's wrong, I thought to myself, oh my God, if I open up and I'm vulnerable, she's going to remove her love from me. And if she removes her love, my primitive brain says, I'm out of the tribe, I die. So most of the struggles that we have today, whether it's shutting down with your spouse or drinking too much, eating too much, is our primitive brain rolling back to, you might not survive, so you got to keep doing this negative thing. But the beauty is when you figure out the negative thing is nothing more than untruth, guess what? You rewrite the neural pathway, and then guess what happens to the negative thing? It goes away. Yeah. So I've created this joy regenerator, because when you fight with your spouse, number one, a relationship problem with an intimate partner is never about the actual relationship. It's the relationship you have with yourself. So if you can fix a relationship you have with yourself, your marriage is going to get a lot better. So we created this tool called the joy regenerator. When you feel a negative emotion, you ask yourself, you first get present, because if you have a negative emotion, you're in fight or flight. So you get present, you ask yourself what the emotion is. Let's say I'm angry, I'm sad. You give yourself compassion for that, because your 5-year-old self didn't get compassion. And then you ask, where does this come from? Well, in my case, every time I ever have a negative emotion, Gina, it's because it's the old Brad saying you're not enough. So I ask myself, is it true that I'm not enough? Right. And the answer is no, I'm enough. So then I ask myself, do I want to be in a feeling negative state based on an untruth? No. One step further, and you can use this with your husband tonight, and you can teach this to him. What you say when you feel that negative emotion is, Gina, what you just said or did made me feel sad. It's not your fault at all, but can we talk about it so I can heal and we can become closer? Right. That's what you do. And then you open your heart, and conflict leads to better connection. When I have conflict now, we walk out of there and it's tough. I mean, sometimes it's a couple days, but we're processing stuff. And when we're done, we're closer, because we're not hurling insults and trying to prove our worth. We're getting to the bottom of what is actually hurting us. And it's never the actual situation. It has nothing to do with it. We go and pull in this meaning from childhood into the actual event.
Well, and it's I don't mean to be laughing. It's just that it's so true. So true. And for me, then I see what happens is for people's health, right? If they're still living like this 5-year-old and trying to, I had a client, a female, who her voice changed. We worked on camera because she was not in California. Her voice changed, her face changed, her mannerisms, the way she used her hands, held her head. When you said something she didn't like, it was like, whoo. And I finally, confronted her. Okay, there's an inner child coming out. And this inner child, I'm sure, is also in your marriage, because I can see from conversations we're having. And that child didn't belong in a marriage bed or any marriage conversations or, in the business, in her friendships. And once we got to the bottom of changing that, everything changed. And it's hard when that untruth is still playing. To me, it's like a record, the old-fashioned records, and now it's skipping and it's skipping and like, how many years do you want to listen to that? I'm glad you brought that up. And this, being present, having that awareness is definitely number one for anything. And I think if we realize that it's not that's as scary as we think, like you were talking about the tribes and, judgment. You brought up all my favorite topics, by the way. What else would you like to say? Because I know I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you mentioned health. Mark Minkola, I don't know if you know Mark. He's becoming a friend of mine. I had him on the podcast. He's helped like 4,000 or 5,000 people over the last 4,000 people over the last 40 years. He has this amazing documentary on Gaia, and he has a book. And he says the opposite of self-love And by the way, if you want to see if you have self-love, go take a 3-minute quiz at unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz, and you are going to maybe start a journey that forever changes your life in ways you can't imagine. But he says, if you're struggling in your marriage, you have health issues, whatever, I bet you lack self-love. He says the opposite of self-love is self-contempt. Self-contempt breeds dis-ease in the body.
Yes.
Dis-ease breeds disease. So if you want to be the human, the adult that says, you know what, I'm just going to get over my childhood. There's no just getting over. You got to do the work. If you don't do the work, guess what? The universe is going to take care of it through death or cancer or some type of autoimmune disease. So just do yourself a favor and your family and your business. Just go do the work. Sign up with Gina, sign up with me, sign up with whoever. But we're here to tell you that no matter what your situation is, no matter how grave or bad you think your situation is, you are literally weeks, if not hours away from changing everything, because I am a living testament to it. Yeah. And so are 100 of my clients and thousands of my mentors' clients. Real change is possible when you are ready. And there is a better way than the traditional Western medicine where they diagnose you, label you, and put you on drugs. Yeah. 70% of Americans are on a prescription drug. That is insanity. 100 million Americans are on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety. That is insanity. There should be like 10,000 people on those drugs.
It's a shame you don't live next door. I'd be hanging out with you all day.
I agree. I'd love to expand my network with people like you because this stuff is so important to me, and I can see how it changes lives. Yeah, and it really and I don't know Mark, but I am going to ask you at the end to introduce me if you don't mind. You're Mark, not my husband, Mark, but. Louise Hay, who has since left this magical earth, she always spoke of dis-ease and how that disharmony can come. And I felt it multiple times in my life where I would go running to my acupuncturist, okay, help me because I feel like it's starting to come in, and I don't want that happening. And I think that people need to understand. Sometimes I had someone who I spoke to the other day and guilt was coming up. She called it mommy guilt. Of taking care of herself when she has a spouse and children. But the thing that you mentioned is, right, you're so much closer if you just step out and raise your hand, say, I'm ready to do the work. We are both absolutely ready here to help you. But the extra layer of that is not only your health, but how you can change how you exactly changed your son's life. And I think your daughter's as well. I mean, it wasn't right, but it ripples out. And then I think, is her name Yvonne? It just keeps expanding. And so if we could just take a moment and say, I value myself enough. I value my family, my love, whoever, my pets enough that I am going to make this happen and invest the money, the time, and the energy that it takes and align with the right person, it is number one. I love the fact that you said earlier, people think, oh, I'm just going to hire a business coach. I'm going to do, sign up for this mastermind, Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is it is an inside journey. And I think that from a young age, I'm old enough that I was asked to get a ride to the library to crack open the encyclopedia, which most people don't even know what that is anymore, to find our answers. But the truth is the answers are the inside. And if we can work with someone like you, Brad, to bring forth that journey. For me, I'm a New Yorker, right? That's my accent. I like things done fast. So yeah, I understand how modern medicine, swallowing a pill is the answer to have a quick result, but there's a bunch of side effects, right? When they show the commercials, it's like, and then, by the way, you might suffer from, you're like, oh, really? That right there should be the reason why you don't listen to the rest of the ad. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh. And instead of these Band-Aids, why not? And I think also, because I've seen it firsthand, sadly, that in our country, right, medicine is covered by insurance. Yet the things that I enjoy, going for energy work, whether it's a Chinese medicine, et cetera, or a nice healthy massage, is not covered.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people think, well, it's just easier. And they're on this, what is it, hamster or gerbil, the wheel that they're running, and they forget to stop and say, so I love that we're having this conversation because you've hit on so many things. So what kinds of transformations do you see for your, well, why don't you tell us first for you?
Yeah.
Exchange your relationship with your kids, right? Keep going.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to that. For 47 years, I chased external things thinking they were going to bring me happiness, boats, millions of dollars, women, cars, status. And we have everything that we need to be happy right now inside of us. And if you're struggling or you're suffering, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. I promise it's not your fault.
Right.
It's just your mind, again, pushing you into this perceived solution that's really killing you just based on something over here that's completely untrue. So when you figure that untruth out, everything changes. So my journey, you spoke about my daughter. She's now 17. She was supposed to be a senior in high school this year, but we've moved her to the community college because she didn't really like high school. So she's doing dual enrollment. So now she's driving to community college every day. She just finished a babysitting job, babysitting a 3-month-old, which she just loves. She's looking to become a server. Our relationship has never been better. She's completely changing. So if you have kids with behavioral problems, if you have kids with alcohol, addiction issues, depression, anxiety, if you have kids that are doing anger, really doing really bad in school, and you call me and you're like, I need help from my kids, the first thing I'm going to be is go take my self-love quiz. And if you really want to help your kids, help yourself. I think the greatest gift that any parent can give a child is to break the multi-generational curse that they're in. How do you do that? You teach your child how to love themselves unconditionally. How in the world can you teach your child to love themselves unconditionally if you don't? So learn to love yourself, and then listen, your family for generations will change, because here's the deal. If you don't change, guess who your kids are going to go marry? They're going to go marry someone with lack of self-love too, because there's no way that someone with lack of self-love can go marry someone with self-love, because the person with self-love would be with this person for 5 minutes and be like, I can't be with this person. So you can do this for your family, for your health, for your business.
Yeah, I love that. There was, what did you say earlier that just popped into my mind? Hang on. I wrote some notes. Oh, what was it? Well, first, I love the fact that I have to congratulate you for saying, like, break the multi-generational, trauma. And also the fact that investing in ourselves, right? I think one thing I realized very quickly as a new mom, I wasn't a young mom, but I was a new mom. I was 33 when we had our son. And I remember speaking to someone, she was in the therapy world. I don't know what her job was, but we were just having like a conversation on the street, a neighbor. And I said, it's so hard parenting sometimes. And she goes, well, that's because you're parenting the way your parents did, which was parents are the rulers, but your son is going to kindergarten where he's meeting other kids where the kids ruled the house, and mom and dad wanted to please the children in every way, shape, and form, where I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening here. Like there's a hierarchy and you're down here, now my son is 6'4". He's outgrown me, even in my platform shoes, but there's still a hierarchy, and I think that if people can hear, especially in America, where so much of their extra money goes towards the children, to sports, to dance, to all these extra activities, sometimes I want to say, what if you my kids played restaurant. They made menus. We bought them plates and stuff that they could use. They took containers, like they made a menu. What if you give them free time to just explore, and then take some of that money and invest the time, energy, and money into improving yourself? Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I've never even thought about that, but what a great point. I think it's also really important for the parents to know that if your kids are struggling and you hear the word trauma, you're like, I mean, out of the 100 clients I've had, only 10 have ever told me they had a bad childhood when I asked the question. But I know they didn't have the perfect childhood, not that anyone does, because they wouldn't be coming to me with their issues if they did. So I think this point is really, really important. If you're sitting there saying, well, I didn't have any trauma, because in your head, trauma is being locked in a cage or beaten or sexually molested.
Not fed. Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that the example I used earlier, when you tell your mom you hate her as a 5-year-old because she wouldn't give you a cookie and she cries for 2 hours and then dad spanks you, that is trauma. That may be little t trauma, but that's trauma. So don't think that you look back over your life and be like, well, I was never, something happened to you. So whether it's there was the helicopter mom, or dad was working all the time, or there was violence or fighting, or they had money problems. Something happened where your brain went from this pure essence that you were born as, without depression, without anxiety, without eating problems, without addiction, and to where you are today. Something's in that pathway, and that's the part that's not your fault. And don't think it has to be some ginormous thing. It doesn't. It could be your sister coming home from the hospital after being born, and your parents spend a bunch of attention on her, which they have to, and you think, oh, mommy and daddy must love her more than me, and so therefore I'm not lovable, I'm no good. And that leads you to be a meth addict when you're 25. Like, it can happen.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because I think that sometimes, even when people ask me, what do I do? And, oh, well, you must help people who are miserable. No, I help people who are very happy, and they know that there's another layer of happiness waiting for them. I'm not helping people who are miserable. They're not going around pointing the finger for blame and fault or judging others, and I'm sure that's the same for who you're attracting as well, and I think that the thing about trauma is we have to remember that we're seeing it through a 5-year-old's eyes. So we didn't have, now I'm 55, 50 years of life experience to realize, oh, hey, mom crying, maybe she was hormonal that day, or maybe there was something else going on in the marriage or maybe dad's job was in jeopardy, or you know what I mean? Or maybe her best friend just passed away. But at 5 years old, we don't have what's the word? We
don't have a logical brain.
Logical. Thank you. I was like, what's the word? You see me, my Italian hands. I'm glad you could read my mind. But yeah, we don't have that logic to cope. And so that trauma could be something small. I remember years ago, I was chatting with my brilliant, I call him Jesus on earth, back on the East Coast, Camilo Sanchez. He's a brilliant healer who certified me in yoga teacher training a long time ago. And he was saying, for some, a trauma could be somebody a child witnessed an accident, a car accident that was very frightening. They may have been on the side of the road, saw this crash, the energy changes quickly, and there was a man in a yellow hat. And now, if the husband, many years later, brings out a yellow hat, it just triggers an emotion within them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this was, 20 some odd years ago. Fascinating to me that we can link even a color and a texture, a tie, that person was yelling on a certain day. I had one student many, many years ago who told me her son would say, my teacher was in a bad mood. She always wears this certain dress when she is in a bad mood. And the mom was very friendly with the teacher and eventually saw her in the dress and said, oh, my son has told me about this dress, and then shared. And the woman's like, oh, you know what? And she came back later and said, you know what? I found that I do wear this dress when there's like something that's unnerved me that I'm a little angry about. So it's all, there's so many levels, I guess is what I want to say.
I love it. It's so true. I had a healer on my podcast in the last week, and she told me that she had treated a woman who had a severe phobia of bunny rabbits. And I'm like, how can anyone be afraid of a bunny rabbit? You know what? Her dad packed up his shit and all of his stuff when she was 10, and she's standing out on the front porch watching him get in his car and leave, and there's a bunny rabbit there. So for all these years, when she saw the bunny rabbit, it would bring just exactly what you're saying. So again, if you have phobias, fears, addictions, whatever, it's not your fault. Now, when you have awareness, and we've just given you awareness, now you do have a responsibility to help yourself or your kids or whatever. But for 47 years, I was in an invisible prison. I had no idea. If you're in prison and you want to escape, what's the first thing you've got to do? You've got to realize you're in prison, because if you don't know you're in prison. So some people absolutely know they're in prison, but like me and probably a lot of the clients that you work with, I really didn't know that I'd put myself in this invisible prison, all the while just trying to protect myself. But that protection kept me from what I ultimately wanted. And that's joy and peace and freedom and deep connection.
Yeah. So let's talk about joy and peace and freedom and deep connection, because I love those. And I mean, we could talk for probably more than one episode, and I'm happy to be on your show in the future, as we know in October. But, joy, peace, connection, those are things that I want people to understand. They're available 24/7. And we just have to be able to have, like you said, the awareness. I love the invisible prison because I'm a visual person, and that's a great visual. And choosing it. Like it's, I think sometimes, I don't know if this has happened to you, but I have a feeling it probably has. If you've walked into a room and because your energy is the way it is, I'm sitting here, for those listening on Apple or a podcast, you're not seeing him, but I am, you glow. So have you ever had people, I know it happens to us women, you walk into the room, you're feeling good, and then you can tell some people like other women, towards you. Does that happen to you as a man?
I think there are some people, because I've gone a lot of the rooms I walk into, people knew the old Brad, and I think they look at me like, who is this guy? Like, I've been told my skin looks different, my face looks different, I talk different. So I think a lot of people are like, what the hell happened to him?
And I want some, right?
Yeah. No. Some people say I want some, and some people I think are so scared, and they're in this protection mode of this negative behavior. Because remember, it's serving them. It's actually serving them, keeping them from. They think if they go over here to face that thing, it's going to be really bad, but it's not that bad. I mean, we're talking about like an hour or two worth of work. I've had some impromptu conversations with friends where in an hour they're like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm making this little money all because I was trying to be a perfectionist, because that's what I was trying to do as a kid to get my mom's and dad's love." I mean, I have a shirt on right now that says the only diet that works is self-love. What does that really mean? It means that look at the diet industry, 2 billion. I mean, it's enormous, right? How many people do you know in your life that's lost a bunch of weight and put it back on? Until you figure out what's driving the negative behavior of eating too much and making the wrong food choices, you can lose a bunch of weight, but the chances are you're going to put it back on. There was a famous study that was done in California, your neck of the woods, called the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Why did that whole thing come up? And by the way, the premise of it is 0 to 10. You have zero adverse experiences as a kid. You're probably pretty good. You probably don't have health problems and addictions and all that. The more you have, if you have 10, then oh my gosh, like you are destined for not good stuff unless you do the work. But how did this whole study come up? It was a weight loss doctor in California that had all these women that were losing weight, but they were dropping out of the program. So he went and talked to them, and they're like, if we lose weight, our attackers might come back. So they were living in this untruth that I've got to keep eating because as a child, I wanted to be bigger or I wanted to be stronger. So I ate to get my attackers off. So again, like none of this stuff is your fault.
Yeah, you find that also in, I had done research many years ago. I'm trying to remember, I think after calling off a wedding to the wrong guy. And somebody said you should read some like loss books, and so I did. And one of them was pointing to the fact of weight being, you use the word attackers, young girls or women who had been abused, sexually assaulted, abused, whatever layer.
That's what I was meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. Of, like if I have this protection around me, or if I don't look as tempting,
to
to the opposite sex,
Yes.
or even if it was same sex, whatever,
Yes.
if I don't look as attractive, if I protect myself. And then also, I think of, we mentioned food, alcohol, drugs. What about busyness? The person who is constantly overscheduled, running from place to place, kids are in a million different activities, no time to sit and just be silent.
Yeah.
And alone. And listen, I'm a people person. My husband is more the quiet. That's why we attracted each other, right? We needed some balance. But we do need time to be alone and meditate and do the things that bring us joy and fulfillment. And we have to remember, I love that we brought up today that fear of facing whatever it was through a 5 or 3 or 13-year-old's eyes. I had one client, it was through a 13-year-old's eyes.
Yeah.
And when she could see that, it wasn't then that frightening, right? Like you were mentioning the rabbit, like rabbits I love rabbits. I've had them as pets, but, it's when we can find those links, and there are people talented and gifted who have the ability to do that. So let's talk about joy and peace. And I do think you're right. I can imagine some people are like, oh, I know what I wanted to mention. You said about your face changing. So I've teamed up with, and I bring in a brilliant face reader who could probably work for the FBI because she's so highly skilled. She can tell when somebody's lying, holding back, like in a divorce, if somebody has more money to bring to the table, a contract negotiation, she does, big businesses buying out each other, whatever. Or she used to. She's trained in that, micro expressions. And it's true, the face does change. Years ago, I knew a mom who became a yoga student of mine when I was teaching yoga. And I met her in Target, and she was chewing a piece of gum at like 9:30 in the morning, like so hard. And I was like, oh my God, like I have a strong empathic abilities. So when somebody is really close to me with their cart, I can feel like the tension. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like the piece of gum for those few moments that we were talking. And I was like, oh, I'm tired. And I just could feel the pain in her jaw and the anger and frustration. But I asked her if she would go to that same acupuncturist who trained me and licensed me in yoga teacher training. And I said to him, I knew you could help her. She started attending my yoga classes and meditating, thanks to listening to me. And then she went to him, and I said, her face has changed. She goes, I know, isn't it great? Like all the stress just gone, and that glow from the inside out. It's a beautiful thing when kind of the eyes sparkle, the skin shimmers, and there's a groundedness. Like I think when we spoke, just to connect to see if we would be on each other's show, I could feel your groundedness and your joy through the phone call. And it was so refreshing, because that's what I like to be around. That to me is like, wow, yeah, you're making my morning today by having this conversation. So how would you express the difference in when you look back to the old, as you said, to now the reborn? Like, can you give us some words that describe the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think the old was hurt. Hurt. I was hurt. I was still, because your subconscious mind, its only role in your brain and your body is to keep you alive. It doesn't care if you're happy or sad. So therefore, it doesn't know time. So if you're 10 years old and you walk by a bush and it's shaking and you do nothing, and you walk by and the lion bites your arm, at 80, you want to remember, shaking bush, I better run. So really, all we're adults, but we're 6-year-olds in adults' bodies. We're living the life of the 6-year-old. So earlier, Gina, you mentioned, you didn't say the word racing mind, but you said never stopping, which is really
right. Yes.
mind. I deal with a lot of people with racing minds. What trauma does is it takes you out of the present. I think most Americans, probably 80% of Americans, spend 75 to 80% of their time in a fight or flight triggered state, because there's still this little 6-year-old that's thinking about when mommy said, when you told mommy you hated her and she cried and daddy spanked you, you're still stuck in that. And that's what's causing all of your issues now. So the old Brad, hurt, wounded, fragile, maybe reckless to some degree, selfish, non-compassionate. The new Brad, grounded. I love that. I've never described myself, but grounded.
Yes, you're very grounded. You're very, very grounded. Joyful,
confident, loving. There's no one in the world now that I can say I hate. I don't like what certain people do, but at their core essence, they're as good as you or I are. They went through they went through something that caused them pain, and now they're doing stuff that is not good. But who they are as a soul, we are all just soul searching for love. So I think that's how I would describe, and I guess just excited, like, purposeful, driven. I'm fulfilled. Like I know God put me here to do this type of work, and I just love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I think there are a lot of people like yourself and myself who do have a purpose, but they might not be realizing it yet. Would you say, and maybe that was too leading of a question, I feel like all my life experiences, all my twists and turns are blessings that have brought me the ability to do what I do today. Would you agree for yourself that, like, are you happy that you went through what you went through?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. Had I had the perfect childhood, I wouldn't be talking to you, and I wouldn't have transformed other people's lives. So we talked about racing mind, we talked about fight or flight, and now we're talking about purpose. So few people I talk to really know their true purpose. If you're in fight or flight and you're running from a lion, how in the world are you going to be figuring out or worried about your purpose? So you do this work in a matter of weeks. You go from lack of self-love to self-love. You've killed the proverbial lion that's chasing you. Now you can take a couple deep breaths and look around and be like, oh, this is why I was here. Literally within weeks of doing that work in Park City, February of 2021, I knew, like, my life changed so radically that I was like, I've got to give this gift back to other people. Yeah. Because when I look around, all the people have the same issue from the same. And if I can do it with myself, and there's nothing special about Brad, I promise you, then Jane or Johnny or Billy can do it. And so I've started showing them, and it's been such a blessing. I have a successful real estate company that runs without me. We've done deals, flipped houses or apartments where I've made $300,000, $400,000. Let me tell you, when I got a text 6 months ago from a client who came to me with his marriage on the brink of divorce. I never met with his wife. I've never met her. I never had a marriage counseling session. But 18 months later, his marriage is great. He's texted me like 6-8 months ago, and he said, Brad, thank you for changing my life and my family's life. That was more rewarding than any $300,000 or $400,000 house.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I think people need to understand. Like someone was talking to me again about, like, what do you do? How do you do it? And all of that. And it's like, you have to experience it, right? Because sometimes you don't believe that living like this is even possible.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so magical, like you said, no amount of money could bring you the same joy, the inner, like from your soul, when you've changed somebody's life, because you can't put a price on that. And it's your work sounds just like mine. It's fast, furious, and life-changing.
Yes.
And I think that's very different than reading a book, joining a mastermind. For me, I don't like signing up for something where I'm with a bunch of other people. I want one-on-one attention. So that's the way I work. I work only one-on-one with people, because it's hard to speak about things that are very private in front of a big group or even a small group. I think those private things need to remain between two people, the person and people tell me things. They're like, I've never even told my spouse. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
I hear that all the time too.
Right. And I'm not here to judge. I'm not perfect. We're all figuring it out. We're all lifting each other up. And I think that it's important to understand, though, when you do have the awareness and you step into choosing and raising your hand and working with somebody, you quicken the pace, you get to where you want to be for the rest of your life.
Rest of your life, yeah. You'll have the tools. Yeah, so many people think, Gina, that getting a certain amount of money is going to bring them to a certain state. In my case, it was worthiness and people would love me, right?
Yeah.
But you can create that state today. And here's the thing: if you create that state today through working with you or me or whoever you want to work with, the chances of you getting to the $5 or $10 million or whatever your goal is goes through the roof. Money doesn't bring you happiness. Happiness brings you money. If you can figure out something that you love to do and you're not trying to make money like I was for 47 years to try to prove my worth, everything has changed. My financial life has changed dramatically in the last 3.5 years because I've gotten rid of all these limiting beliefs that were pulling me in all these different directions based on trying to prove it doesn't matter if I'd have made $25 million. I still would have felt not enough. Look at the billionaires who take their lives. Some billionaires are some of the loneliest people in the world. And they have all this money. Money just won't get it done. I know a lot of people want to argue about that, but it's the truth. Money can't bring you happiness.
No, I mean, to me, it brings freedom, right? My husband's a double organ transplantee, so having money and a good job and health insurance brought him the freedom to choose which hospital he could go to be cared for, to keep him alive, and money is great when you can give it back also, right? The more money someone has, the more generous they can be and hire more people and donate and contribute and change lives, etc. And I think when we're happy, when we're on purpose, doing the things that only we can do, I like to always tell my kids, you're as unique as your fingerprint. They're like, yeah, here we go again. She's going to start her,
stuff.
Right. They're like, they can finish the sentence. Yeah, Mom, we know, we heard it. But, we have gifts and we have talents and we have desires and we have these truths, and there are ways of figuring it out and stop the limiting beliefs. So anyway, I love all of it. Go ahead.
You were put here for a massive mission. Every single person was put here for a massive mission. If you're sitting there struggling, you're like, I don't know what my mission is. Well, it's because of everything that we've just talked about for the last 50 minutes. Once you clear that out, find that untruth that's driving you, quash it, literally rewrite the new neural pathways. I just realized 20 years ago that you now can do this. The negativity, the behavior that you want to change is going to be gone. It vanishes. And then you can look around and be like, oh, this is why I was put here. So don't give up hope if you're struggling today, because tomorrow can be completely different. Yeah.
And it's that exciting. So I'd love for you to, I'm going to let you tell them what you'd like to offer. And please, if you're driving, you do not need to pull over. The information is in the show notes. You can simply go there. I know you did mention the quiz, I think. And I know you have other things in your podcast as well. Please. Yeah, the How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs podcast. If you like this type of content, you'll love the show. UnlockLimitlessYou.com is our website. If you go UnlockLimitlessYou.com/Brad, it has all my contact information, all my social media. It even has my cell phone number. So if you're really struggling and you need someone, pick up the phone. I'll answer. I'll talk to you. We'll be happy to speak with myself or Yvonne if you'd like to do a 30-minute free session with us. That would be great. Awesome. So I'd love to pull a card for you from the Opening to Possibilities deck. Sweet. And let me just shuffle. I'd shuffled before we started, but let me just do one more. Okay. So you just tell me when to stop, Brad. Okay. Stop. Okay. Which one is it? Because the flower one on with the blue and the white. I think that is it this one? Boom. Yes. Trust. Perfect. I told you it goes along with everything we've spoken about. Trust grows as you surrender and believe in yourself and others. And there's 3 questions you can answer, 1, 2, or all 3. How do you describe trust? What experiences of trust have you had? How have they shaped your ability to trust? Wow. So I believe trust is you build trust by doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And I think for 47 years, I did not trust myself. Because I had these untruths that were driving my life. So,
I think you need to trust in yourself. And how do you do that? By getting rid of these limiting beliefs. And you need to trust that no matter what state you are in, and no matter what you have tried to date, there is a better way.
Yes.
When you're ready, the teacher, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And if you're ready, make it happen.
Yeah, I love that. And it's been so much fun chatting with you. I think I'm going to have you back again. There are so many different layers that we can go deeper into, but I think we hit on so many of the important things that need to be spoken about. These limiting beliefs can be cleared, and there is a future, that the one that you desire and deserve. I think sometimes people have to wait till the rug is pulled out from underneath them with a health struggle, a marriage, or a wealth struggle, a loss of some sort, before they say, okay, I see the light and I'm ready to do something. So I'm glad that you brought a voice, and especially a male voice, and losing $9 million over however many a span of 12 years. Which 9 million, some people can't even make that don't have the experience to make that within even their lifetime. So thank you for being so honest. Thank you for doing the work yourself and taking the journey, because now I know how many lives you're touching and lighting the way for others, and really becoming exactly what the world was missing. And that's what Exquisitely Aligned is all about. So thank you for doing that, Brad, and not just for your family and loved ones, but for everyone out here listening to your voice. Your story is incredible, and I appreciate you sharing it so transparently.
Thank you. Change either happens with desperation or inspiration. And I'm hoping that one of us or both of us inspired you today to make the change, because like you said, you don't have to wait until desperation occurs to make a change.
No.
Thank you, Gina.
You're welcome. So if you're ready to make that change, and not waiting till that desperation, because we would prefer you do it from a place where you're just ready. Both of us are here waiting for you and ready to assist. And listen, explore and play. I mean, this is not something you need to get right. It's not about proving anything to anybody. It's just about stepping into a new way of living and being, and letting life unfold. So I want to invite you also to the fact that the Exquisitely Aligned book is now pre-launching, and that information will be here as well. Again, if you want to speak to either of us, the information is in the show notes. Till next time, be exquisite.